Hello, my name is Fred today, and I'm a recovered alcoholic. I'm here to read the Daily Reflections book for August 20th, 2026. It's called Toward Emotional Freedom. Since defective relations with other human beings has nearly always been the immediate cause of our woes, including our alcoholism, no field of investigation could yield more satisfying and valuable rewards than this one. That's from the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions book found on page 80. Willingness is a peculiar thing for me in that over a period of time it seems to come first with awareness, but then with a feeling of discomfort, making me want to take some action. As I reflected on taking the 8th step, my willingness to make amends to others came as a desire for forgiveness of others and myself. I felt forgiveness toward others after I became aware of my of my part in the difficulties of relationships. I wanted to feel the peace and serenity described in the promises. From working the first 7 steps, I became aware of whom I had harmed and that I had been my own worst enemy. In order to restore my relationships with my fellow human beings, I knew I would have to change. I wanted to learn to live in harmony with myself and others so that I could also live in emotional freedom. The beginning of the end of my isolation from my fellows and from God came when I wrote my 8th step list, period, at the end of the reading. Now, yesterday, and maybe the day before, hopefully enough this month, I've been mentioning that step 8, I'll just say, aside from deciding this thing, I would have to change our thinking. It changes all the time. We get locked into patterns for I don't know how long, but that can be changed. See, because I want to use this word easy or simple. Step 8 should be easy or simple, in that all anybody's asking you to do is to make a list of people you had harmed. You could even put a period right there, I would say, to give you some leeway, some freedom, to make it seem not so overwhelming. It's the very beginning of like doing some kind of tangible, concrete, kinetic action where you are asked to move your body in some kind of way. You need to type or write, maybe audibly record a list of people you had harmed. All the people you had harmed. Okay, let's read step 8. It's to help explain this a bit more. Step 8 of the 12 Steps of Alcoholics Anonymous says, made a list of all persons we had harmed, comma, and became willing to make amends to them all, period. That's the end of the 8th step. So there's 2 actions depending on how you define action. We make a list and we become willing. What kind of list? Groceries? Maybe you could start with that just to get warmed up, but it says make a list of all persons we had harmed. That right there gets to be, the mind steps in and starts to want to judge and criticize. At least mine does. And I think overall it says make this list of people I had harmed and become willing to make amends to them all. All the people, make amends to them all for the harm I caused them. And I would think just writing down the words, the letters, the characters, however you want to put it, of the word I hurt Jack and Jill and John and Fred and Ted and Barb and Alice and whatever. Um, that doesn't take that much time or really that much effort. And all it's asking, after all, is to make this list of people we had harmed. It doesn't, and become willing. But I like to take that as a whole separate other, that I'll worry about that a little bit later. Let's just get like the raw inventory of the people down. And right away, the very first time I tried to do this, I had to cheat, like in a way. I had a mental list that I refused to write down. And then I had a list that I could write down and would. I was willing to write down the list. And the only way it became, wait a minute, part of the way it became easy, this easy word or simple to do, is when I took it like in these two parts, that, okay, just the willingness part to make amends, that's just going to have to wait, because I'm getting hung up in knowing I am being asked to make amends to these people, and then I would start thinking of the people I might have harmed or I did harm and writing it down, and then I would go, oh man, this one, there's no way I can make an amend to that person. And so in some cases, they just stayed on the mental list where I had not written their name down, because I thought that's never going to happen. I'm never going to make an amend to this person. And so if you did that for all names, you're not going to be able to do step 8. So what I did find was the people closest to me, like the people I had most contact with in a daily thing, and any surviving members of my family, and the deceased members of my family. See, this starts to get a little bit tricky here with how do you make an amend to somebody that isn't here. And I found something that might be helpful with that it had something to do with, well, one possible fix with that is to write a letter as if this person is sitting right next to you or across the table maybe, and sit here and imagine if that person was still alive, or imagine this person was still alive and right across the table from you, and you want to make some amends for the harm you caused that person. Just write it down on a piece of paper as you might, like, hello, guy I harmed or woman I harmed. In becoming sober, I've realized I need to do certain steps to help me stay sober. And part of those steps is looking at my past and trying to fix the wreck I caused of it or in it. And you're part of that. I caused you a lot of damage, and I'm very sorry. And I wish there was something I could have done while you were around to maybe better enjoy the benefits of my amendment of the harm or something like that. But however, you are not, and this is the best I know to do right at this point. Write a letter, I'm sorry, I did this and that or whatever, and it caused you a bunch of harm. It also harmed me, and it kept me using and addicted and drinking. And then once I got sober, it kind of got worse for a little bit, at least for me, because now I didn't have my crutch of alcohol or drugs. And I realized I needed to change. Okay, so where does that leave us? 10 minutes to explain that. Toward emotional freedom. That's it. If I keep each day that I read this, if I come back and remember to read the title again, I can't read that. So that means you cannot read that either. It says toward emotional freedom. That's the point in today's reading. Emotional freedom. And that's why I kind of slowed down and hit this part in particular. I knew I would have to change. I wanted to learn to live in harmony with myself and others so that I could also live in emotional freedom, period. Emotional freedom to me is free from, let's say, the chains of resentment. Like I was saying, these people are never going to be on this list. I will never make an amend to them all. Meaning, these couple people or 10 people, I'm never going to make an amend to these people. I'm not even going to put them on the list. Any sense of forgiveness for anything? Not in my head yet. I'm happy to report that has all changed, and I've made amends to everybody. All people now, wherever possible. That's from step 9. Emotional freedom, many chains anchoring me, tying me down in the resentment. Made for a pretty sad fellow that you're looking at here, and angry. For years and years and years and decades, might as well just say a decade and a half. I've been sober 20 years. It took me maybe a little bit over, it took me at least 10 years to do like 90% of my list in step 8. Just writing it down, I think. There were some points where I was able to do the step 9 thing, which is to actually make the amend. Because like it said here, willingness is a peculiar thing for me in that over a period of time, like these 8 or 10 years, it seems to come first with awareness, like making this list. I'm dredging up these names or looking for people I had harmed, because the goal is looking for emotional freedom to like get out of depression and resentment and anger. Let's just stick with those few things, and fear. It seems to come first with awareness of like these people that I'm putting on this list, but just so skip that. Then with a feeling of discomfort, making me want to take some action. So that without knowing this sentence probably at the time, after being sober for whatever time period and starting to realize, like from today's reading, I needed to change, like these thought patterns I just mentioned. And wow, it looks like step 8 might be a way to do that. So let's do step 8 in whatever particular order. I didn't care at the time. I could not, wait a minute, I would not listen to people. I didn't have a sponsor for the first 2 years, and I just did this program however I felt like it on each individual day. So that, well, to simplify that, I jumped all over the place in the order of doing the steps. And, I thought, and it worked for me in that I then realized at some point these were put in a particular order on purpose for a particular reason. And I started to change right there. I started to understand my ego is getting in the way of a lot of stuff, and probably always had been. So let's see, 14 minutes. I'm trying to keep this under 30. So if I don't make it all the way to my point today, the emotional freedom and making this list, that can be simple in that if you take away the judgment and criticism of whether or not you're willing to make an amend to some people, and you just put their, man, I cannot believe this. I'm going to have to say thank you and goodbye.